illustration of how Gyan leads to Bhakti. Now, Bhakti is generally considered to be ahituki, right? It's considered to be completely independent. But there are also factors that help in the process of Bhakti. So they can be considered as enablers, maybe not causal, but enablers. And they come in two categories. So one is in the category of detachment, those factors that help develop material detachment. And the second are those that come in the category of spiritual attachment. So the reason Bhakti is considered to be independent is because when one develops sufficient spiritual attachment, then automatically detachment appears. But this is not the case in everyone's situation. There are some who take to Bhakti so strongly and so completely that just the process of Bhakti drives away any taste for material enjoyment. But for the sadhakas, for those who are gradually practicing devotional service and developing Bhakti within them, then material detachment also plays an important role. So these verses from 4 to 12, Gyan is something that leads to material detachment. So it is said that Gyan leads to Bhakti in that sense. That Gyan leads to material detachment and creates the pathways. It makes it easier for one to take to devotion service. Okay, so we will resume from verse 5. Atakayamimam vidvan avidyakam karmavi araptiti naivasmin pratibuddho nusajjate. Those who are in full knowledge of the body conception of life, who know that this body is composed of nations, desires, and activities resulting from illusion, do not become addicted to the body. So this is the kind of knowledge that is steering one away from the material conception. So Lord Vishnu is saying that full knowledge of bodily conception of life. And what does the knowledge comprise of? Understanding that the body is composed of nations, ignorance, desires, activities resulting from illusion. So when one understands this reality about material existence, one develops detachment. So this knowledge, as I mentioned, can appear because of understanding the nature of material existence and also by the mercy of devotees. So because the Lord Vishnu is talking to Prithu Maharaj, who's a pure devotee, even the Gyan mark to Bhakti is Bhakti Ashraya. Right? In the next verse, he will say that this knowledge appears because of devotion, or more specifically because of service to devotees. So essentially, in the context of what was going on, Lord Vishnu is telling Maharaj Prithu that these current rituals are typically performed for the material welfare of the people. They are not meant for someone like Maharaj Prithu. Now, there are examples in the past of kings like Maharaj Yudhishthir who have performed such Karmakand rituals, specifically Ashwamedha Yagyas. And their motivation is very similar to that of Maharaj Prithu, that it is done to assure and inspire the masses. Because if the king cannot inspire the praja to take to bhakti, then at least they should be inspired to stay on the path of piety. And these come in the category of pious activities. So when they see the king performing such pious activities, they will also be inspired by the piety. Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Vishnu is informing Prithu Maharaj that although the sacrificial performance set an example for ordinary people, there was no need for such sacrificial performance as far as personal self was concerned. And then he quotes Bhagavad Gita 245, Triguni Vishaya Veda, Nistragun Bhavarjuna, Nridvando Nitya Sattvastu Niryoga Shema, Atmavan. Right? The same word, Atmavan, is used. Earlier we saw that when Lord Vishnu was glorifying Prithu Maharaj, he was also addressing him as Atmaman, as one who knows the self. And Bhagavad Gita, same message is given that Atmaman, one who knows the self, Triguna Vishaya Veda. He understands that the Veda primarily deals with the three modes of material nature, Nistraigun Bhavarjuna, that you should transcend the mode. And Nridando Nitya Sattvastu. Right? And then transcending these dualities, then be situated in the self, which is that of the situation of the soul in service to the Lord. Verse 6. Asham sakta sharirasmin amonotpadite grahe apatya dravinvapi kaha kuryan mamatam buddha. How can a highly learned person who has absolutely no affinity from the bodily conception of life be affected by the bodily conception in regard to house, children, wealth, and similar other bodily productions? So Prabhupada says that the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are certainly meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. However, by such activities, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. Rather, with the sanction of the Lord, one tries to satisfy one's own senses. So this is an important point, that by performing the activities that are recommended in the Vedas, in the category of Karma Kand, one does not factually satisfy the Lord. But with the sanction of the Lord, one satisfies one's own senses. So there is some deference to the Lord because one is following the instructions of the Lord. It's like if there are children in the house and the parents say that you can watch television from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. After that, you have to do your studies. Then you have to, so they lay down a set of rules and the children do that. So they are pleasing the parents by following the instructions of the parent. But that does not come at the same level as the children when they're directly doing activities to please the parents. So Prabhupada is very succinctly describing the difference between bhakti and other paths. But later on he says Vedic performance are based on the three modes of material nature. Those who are elevated above it are not interested in such Vedic performance. Rather, they are interested in the higher duties of transcendental love and service to the personality of Godhead. Such devotional service is called Nistraipanya. So, same verse that Prabhupada mentioned in the previous verse, Triguna Vishaya Veda, he continues to comment on it in the context of this verse also. Okay, verse 7. Eka Shuddha Swayam Jyote Nirgunosau gunashrayah sarvo navrt sakshi nirtatmatatmanaha paraha. The individual soul is one, pure, non-material, and self-effulgent. He is the reservoir of all good qualities, and he is all-pervading. He is without material covering, and he is the witness of all activities. He is completely distinguished from other living entities, and he is transcendental to all embodied souls. So this is essentially Sankhya. The definition of the soul that comes in Bhagavad Gita and in the 20 verses from second chapter, verse 11, all the way till verse 31, 32, that is summarized in this verse. So previously, in the previous verse, the Lord had said that how can a highly intelligent person be attached to the bodily conception? So what is the knowledge that the Lord is saying this highly intelligent person is? This is the knowledge, that knowing the position of the living entity and the position of the Lord. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Lord Vishnu in this verse teaches the knowledge of Paramatma caused by detachment. Okay, let me modify a little bit what I said. So this verse is describing both. It is describing the soul and it is describing the super soul also. So the first part of the verse, that the individual soul is one, pure, non-material and self-effulgent. And then he goes on to describe the Paramatma, that he's a reservoir of all qualities, he's all-pervading, without material coverings, the witness of all activities, completely distinguished from all living entities and transcendental to all embodied souls. So these are the qualities of the super soul. So Vishwanath Chakravarti comments on this verse that Lord Vishnu is giving the knowledge of Paramatma caused by detachment, the knowledge that appears by detachment for those who are absorbed in Atmagyan. So the points that he's making, that he's saying that Atma Paran, that the Paramatma is different from the body and the jiva. Right? So he says Nir Atmanat and then Atma Paraha. So Atma Para means that different, and Atmana refers to the embodied soul. So the Paramatma is distinct and different from the soul, even though they exist in the same body. So what are the distinguishing characteristics? Vishwanath Pad says that he, and he refers to Paramatma, he is one, whereas the jivas and the bodies are unlimited. The jiva is impure without knowledge and covered by the gunas, whereas the Paramatma is pure with knowledge and without material gunas. Because he produces the gunas and is independent of them, he's called the shelter of the gunas. The jiva is not pervading everywhere, since he has a material body and conforms to it. The jiva is covered by the body, house, and other objects. The jiva is not the witness because he is often unconscious and thus has clouded vision. The jiva is a small conscious entity dependent on Paramatma, whereas the Paramatma is the greatest conscious entity and independent of the jiva, Niratma. Thus, 9 qualities distinguish the Paramatma from the Jiva and his body. By this statement, as well as 9 differences between the Jiva and the body are shown. So, what are the 9 differences? And the 9 terms are used in this verse. So, Ekaha, Paramatma is one, the soul is many. Shuddha, the Paramatma is pure, the soul can be contaminated. Now, the soul cannot be intrinsically contaminated, but it can be covered. So, it can be contaminated through covering. Third is Swayam Jyotir. The soul is self-revealing, and the Paramatma is self-revealing, and the soul can be covered. Nirgun. The Paramatma is transcendental to the modes. The soul can be under the control of the modes. Then Gunashraya. The Paramatma gives shelter to the modes. The embodied soul takes shelter of the modes. Sarvaga. The Paramatma is all-pervading. The soul is only within the material body. Anavrita. Paramatma can never be covered by matter. The soul is always covered by matter. Sakshi. Paramatma witnesses everything. The soul only witnesses the self. And Nirmatmamat Atmana. That the Paramatma has no duality, and the soul has duality of body and soul. So Srila Prabhupada writes that according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, in this verse, Lord Vishnu is describing himself or the Paramatma. So these 9 differences, and the number of differences, I have these in a table which I will send to Premkishore Prabhu. But we see that at different places there may be different category of differences. Like we did in the 9th chapter of the 4th canto, where Dhruv Maharaj describes the 12 differences between the Lord and the Jiva. So many of them are the same, but there's few differences. More in the way that the same fact is represented. Prabhupada later on says that full knowledge means that the Jivatma, the living entity, must know both his position and the Supreme's position. That is full knowledge. So in this way, we can see how this section is describing the progression of one in knowledge to bhakti. That initially, the knowledge is Atmagya. That I am not the body, but the soul. Then the knowledge progresses to the Paramatma Gyan, which is not only understanding one's own self, but also the position of the Lord. And as it is said that when one understands the position of the Lord, one has no other alternative but to serve him. So when the knowledge is properly situated, that can also become a fertile ground for cultivating bhakti. Okay, let's move on to verse 8. Ya evam santamatmanam atmastham veda purushaha najyati prakrati sthopi tad gunai samai stitaha. All the within the material nature, one who is situated in full knowledge of the Paramatma and Atma is never affected by the modes of material nature, for he is always situated in my transcendental loving service. So when one is situated in the knowledge of Atma and Paramatma, he may be situated within the body, but is still not affected by the 3 modes. So the Lord is saying, although within the material nature. So physically, the person may still be embodied, may still appear to be under the control of the modes. But if the person has the knowledge of Atma and Paramatma, then not affected. The example is given of coconut, that within the outer shell of the coconut is an inner shell. And the inner shell is completely enclosed by the outer shell. But if you shake the coconut, you'll see that the inner shell is moving independently. There's no actual connection between them. So similarly, for this enlightened jiva, they appear to be completely within a material body, but no connection between the jiva and the material body. And then we'll see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes both the situation of the Lord descending to the material world as well as the situation of a pure devotee. So this scenario of being in matter, what's the term that they use, that being of matter but not in matter, or other way around, but essentially indicating that when the Lord descends, then he may appear to be completely material, but he's never material. And the same thing is also applied to pure devotees. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes that the personality of Godhead appears in the material world, he's not affected by the modes of material nature. Similarly, those who are always connected to the personality of Godhead, even though they may be within the material body or the material world, are not affected by the material qualities. So Prabhupada mentions both to indicate that this, what is the science behind an apparently embodied soul becoming free of the connection with matter. So the science that he explains is that when the Lord descends into the material world, he is not affected. Even though he is completely within the material world, he is completely unaffected. When a jiva advances in devotion, then because of his association with the Lord, he begins to acquire qualities like the Lord. And one of the qualities that he acquires is that he transcends the material connection. The Prabhupada quotes 1426, Mamcha vivacharena bhakti yogena sevata sa gunan samityaitan brahma bhuyate kalpate. So one who is unflinchingly engaged in devotional service surpasses the material qualities. Right? Why? Because they acquire a nature like the Lord. Prabhupada also quotes Rupa Goswami that if a person is always engaged in the service of the Lord with his body, words, and mind, he is considered liberated, although living in the material world. Prabhupada made this point a few times that one should not think of liberation as something magical, that there's a flash of light and suddenly things change and panoramic views come. You can be liberated here in this very body, under this very circumstances, and be completely liberated. It's simply a change of conception. That's the only thing that changes. Okay, so let's move on to verse 9. Yasva namam nityam nirasihi shraddhayanvitaha bhajate shankhestasya manorajan prasidhati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, continued, My dear Prithu, when one situated in his occupational duty engages in my loving service without motives for material gain, he gradually becomes very satisfied with it. Now, Lord Vishnu is explaining the process. So he was initially explaining the goal. of developing that knowledge, the Atma Gyan, two kinds of Atma Gyans, of the self and the super soul, and through that developing devotional service. So Gyan to Bhakti. Now the question may be that how does the person develop this knowledge? So in the next few verses, the Lord will talk about Devi Varnashram. That by staying in your position and engaging in your occupational duty, while at the same time serving the Lord, he gradually becomes satisfied. So Prabhupada says that if one works according to the Varnashram system and does not desire fruitive result, he gets satisfaction gradually. Bhajate shankes tasya. So the Lord says in this verse that he gradually becomes satisfied. Discharging one's occupational duty as a means of rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. Bhagavad Gita confirms this as the process of Karma Yoga. In other words, we should act only for the satisfaction and service of the Lord, otherwise we will be entangled by the resultant actions. So Shanaka means slowly. Right? So why gradual? Because there is material motivation. The material motivation is what makes the process gradual. So when we consider pure devotion, we consider it to be without any material motivation, right? In the first canto, Savai Pumsha Parodhan Moito Bhakti Radhok Saje, Ahituki Apratiyata, right? It is Ahituki and Apratiyata, causeless and without any motivation. Only then, what does one experience? Suprasiddhiti. Suprasiddhiti means real happiness. When the bhakti is ahituki apratiyata. So to the extent the bhakti is without material desire, one will experience commensurate happiness. In the second chapter of the first canto, the verse is Dharma Spanashrita Pumsham Vishvaksena Kathasuya Nautpadiyev Yadiratim Shameva Kevala. Right? So the activities of Varnashram, if they do not lead to Vishvaksena Kathasuya, they do not lead to Krishna Katha, Nautpadiyev Yadirati, love for the pastimes of Krishna, Shameva Kevala. There only fruitive activities. There only so much of useful labor. So the progression to bhakti, the path to progression of bhakti is being laid out by the Lord, that one performs one's own duty, and Vishnu Chakravarti kind of gives us an explanation in the purport. So let me read that out. He says that having gained this knowledge of the self and super soul, one then endeavors by Bhakti Mishra Gyan, Swadharmena. So he says Swadharmena essentially means Bhakti Mishra Gyana. This is essentially Karma Yoga. When we perform our occupational duties and offer the results to Krishna, that is Karma Yoga. Now, the terms are a little confusing, because at one point we are calling the state of the person as Jnana Mishrat Bhakti, but we are calling the state as Karma Yoga. And as has been discussed earlier on, that they're given the name because of the prominence of the process. It is not that karma yoga is completely devoid of jnana. or Gyan is completely devoid of karma, or Asthanga is completely devoid of karma and Gyan, but there is a predominance of that. So in Karma Yoga, there is a predominance of performing activities, but Gyan, but with the knowledge of the position of the Atma and Parma. So I was just hearing this lecture where the devotee was sharing that in the Chopati temple, the Radha Gopinath temple, the brahmacharis over there. So there was a Kaviraj, a Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Pawar, and he was kind of like the resident physician. So the devotees there, the temple devotees, especially the brahmacharis, would go to consult. And the doctor basically said that one of the things that he would say is you ate peru to clear your stomach. Peru is some kind of a fruit. It's a bitter fruit. So he would say that to all the people that would go in. That was one of his favorite recommendations, that eat peru. So because there were many brahmacharis who were going to the doctor, they were procuring this peru, and they were putting it in the brahmacharis because they were given lockers, they are given lockers in the temple. They don't have separate like rooms or cupboards. So they were putting this peru fruit in the lockers, and they were locking the lockers. So previously they would have other stuff, like they had CD players by which they could hear bhajans and kirtans, but they were never actually putting a lock on their locker. But when the peru was coming in, then because the peru, they considered it important for their health, they started locking the locker. So for the brahmacharis, the CD players and the other things, they were not really valuable, but the perus were valuable. Now, from an absolute sense, the CD player is obviously a lot more valuable. But because the brahmacharis were looking upon the perus as something that is dear to them for their health, recommended by the doctor, they considered it to be valuable, and they were treating it accordingly. So that's the difference between activities performed in karma and bhakti yoga. So in karma yoga, one performs activities as per one's own propensity, which is essentially reflected in one's varna and ashram. In bhakti, one performs activities only for the pleasure of the Lord. So one may offer $1 million in karma, and one may offer only a few rupees in bhakti. But still the bhakti will be more valuable, because the offering in bhakti is according to the likes of the Lord, right? So the CD players may be more expensive, but for the brahmacharis, the perus were more expensive. It doesn't matter that it takes more money to buy the CD player. You can buy 100 perus with one CD player, but for them, the perus were more expensive. So the mood of a devotee is to find out what the Lord likes and offer that to the Lord. The mood of one who's practicing the path of karma is to determine what he or she likes and then offer that to the Lord. In both the cases, there is an offering to the Lord. The difference is the motivation. Prabhupada in the purport says that devotional service is very simple and anyone can adopt it. Let one remain what he is. He need only install the deity of the Supreme Lord in his house. The deity may be Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan. There are many other forms of the Lord. In this way, a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra can worship the deity with the result of his honest labor. Regardless of one's occupational duty, one should adopt the devotional means of hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, offering everything to the Lord, and engaging in His service. In this way, one can very easily engage himself in the service of the Lord. When the Lord is pleased with one's service, one's mission in life is fulfilled. Right? So Prabhupada here is talking about Devi Varnashram. That regardless of your Varna or Ashram, find out what the Lord likes and do it. So he talks about the 9 processes of bhakti. He talks about deity worship here, and establishes the fact that there are no material qualifications. Like you notice that he's saying that even a Shudra can perform deity worship. So there are no material qualifications in performing activities that are pleasing to the Lord. Okay, I'll do one more verse, and then after that we'll pause for discussion. Parityakta gunaha samya darshano vishadashaya shanti me samavasthana brahma kaivalyamashnute. When the heart is cleansed of all material contamination, the devotee's mind becomes broader and transparent, and he can see things equally. At that stage of life, there is peace, and one is situated equally with me as Sachidanand Vigraha. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that in 1.5 verses, the Lord describes the result of this practice. What is the result? That one acquires a qualitative sameness with the Lord. Right? One is situated equally with me as Satchidananda Vigraha. Prabhupada says that such a person understands both his position and the position of the Lord. In the uncontaminated condition, the living entity understands that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme, and that is called Brahman realization, the spiritual perfection of the living entity. This rapport is very easily achieved. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is immediately situated on the transcendental platform of Kaivalya or Brahma. Same verse, Mamcha Vivacharana. So one can understand that knowledge can help one advance in bhakti. However, at the same time, one needs to always keep in mind bhakti is independent of knowledge. Knowledge can help advance one in bhakti. Knowledge can also cover one's bhakti if the person becomes too absorbed in the study, but not enough in practice. So when we look in the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami tries to define pure devotional service. And what's the verse? 1:11.
Anyablata Sunyam.
Anyavilas. Thank you, Sandhu. Anivilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadya Navritam Anukulena Krishnanu Anushilanam Bhakti Uttamam. So Anushilanam means that there has to be the performance of activities. Anushilanam literally means that Anu means following the others. So the Gyan is only useful if it results in Anushilanam, where one listens and then one implements it under the guidance of someone that is superior and connected to the Parampara. That's when Gyan can become a catalyst to bhakti. Otherwise, Gyan can cover bhakti. One may learn so many shlokas, or one may read so many books, and then one may just become an armchair philosopher. It will not result in any change. Anushilanam should be there. Okay. So let me pause here and see if there's discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think you are looking for this. We are in this world, but we are not of this world.
We are in this world. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. One thing about devotional service. I don't know, Sarang Prabhu still has something to say? You're okay? We were talking about while being in this material world, when we perform bhakti or through the process of devotional service, we can be immune, or we can be aloof of this material world and be situated in the transcendental realm or beyond the modes of material nature. But that is a very high level, right? For us, it is still, at least for myself, I can speak that while performing devotional service, we still are very much in the modes of material nature. And I could see that very well in my case. I was thinking, please clarify me, the enviousness is one of the most important quality why we are in this material world. And so enviousness of Krishna towards Krishna brought us to this material world. And now, being a devotee, we accept Krishna as a supreme personality and we try to render service to him. So can we say that we don't have envy, or we still have envy because we are still in the modes of material nature? So how to understand this? Can you shed some light on it?
Thank you, Prabhu. So it's a good practical question. When we start our process of bhakti, essentially we are reversing the process that got us into the material conditioning. And there are two aspects of reversing it. One is, so when you look at the fall of the jiva, the first thing that happens in the fall of the jiva is the jiva's change of conception, right? The jiva becomes bahirmukhi, becomes, as you were pointing out, envious to Krishna. That is under the jiva's control. Now, because of that, the jiva is caused to fall down to the material world, become affected by the modes of material nature, gets an embodied body. All that is happening because of the original cause, but not because the jiva directly wills it. Right now, this is the situation in which the jiva is. The jiva is conditioned by the modes. The jiva is identifying with matter. All this is external. Brahma does that, right? When Brahma creates the universe, he creates all these 5 kinds of nations, avidyas. And when the bahirmukhi jiva falls, then these 5 kinds of nations covers the jiva. So the famous example, the present example, is that the jiva commits, a person commits a crime, is put into jail. Then the jailer imprisons him. He puts him in a cell, puts a lock on the cell, gives him a uniform to wear, gives him all the bindings of the jail. This is what you have to follow. Jiva doesn't do, the jailer puts that, right? There. So when we are taking to the process of bhakti, it's not that we are trying to, it's not that by the force of our willpower or the force of our own potency, we are not trying to break out of the jail. Essentially, what we are doing is that we are changing the conception. While we were accepting Krishna as a competitor, Now we are accepting Krishna as our Lord and Master, right? So when that root is destroyed, then everything else follows. The jail goes away, the prison guard becomes your friend, the jailer becomes your friend. Till that does not happen, then we are still going to be in the prison. So while we are practicing bhakti, we are essentially attacking that envy that we have in ourselves, and we are removing that. When that envy gets eradicated, then we are liberated at that time. But as long as that envy is there in different shades, will continue to be in the material world. And from a practical perspective in the material world, very few people are envious of Krishna per se, because Krishna is out there, right? Most of the people don't even know Krishna, right? So you tell somebody, are you envious of Krishna? They'll say, who's Krishna? I don't even know. How can you be envious of somebody you don't know? Or even practicing devotees like us, you say, are you envious of Krishna? You can sincerely say that I'm not envious of Krishna, right? Because Krishna is out there. But who are we envious of? We are envious of devotees. We are envious of other jivas. That is the envy that is essentially holding us back. So that is where the process of bhakti works. That as we perform more and more bhakti, the tangible change that you see. So I can bet you, even though I'm not supposed to gamble, but I can bet you that as you are performing bhakti, on a relative scale, your attitude towards those around you has been improving on a day-to-day basis. What got you upset maybe 5 years ago, now you look upon it with a more magnanimous eye. What got you angry, now you get to a situation of how can I help the person. Now, we are all not at the position where we become samdrishti, we are becoming friendly to everybody, but the needle is surely and steadily moving. Right? That's why we continue to stay in the process. When we are performing sadhana bhakti, very few of us have experience of Krishna. Right? If somebody says, I was chanting and I saw Krishna, then somebody comes to me and says that, and I get very concerned that either this person is Sahajiya or he's genuinely deluding himself. So very few people have experience of Krishna. What do they have experience of? They have experience of devotees. That's what keeps them in devotion. Right? So because our envy towards others and specifically towards Krishna devotees is gradually getting eradicated, our taste is increasing, our desire to stay increases, even though there are so many, there are so many external factors that would be constantly dissuading us. Right? We find ourselves misfits in so many situations, whether it comes to material ambition or enjoying materially, or even sometimes devotees, they say it was better when we didn't know. And at least ignorance is bliss. Right? So even they become resentful of the knowledge that they get. So all this is there that is weighing on us. But we are still persisting. Why? Because of Vaishnava Sangha. Because that envy is every day, it's a little less than what it was a day before. And then at some point of time, by the mercy of the devotees, when that envy gets completely eradicated or mostly eradicated, that's when, whether we are in this world or in Vaikuntha or Golok, then at that point we are in the spiritual conception. Then Krishna manifests himself. Krishna manifests with his associates and Leela. So sorry, Prabhu, long answer for a short and precise question.
Thank you. Thank you. I was going to ask one thing on the following that. So the envy towards the devotees, which is what is keeping us here, and it is diminishing day by day, which is well, certainly I could see that happening in me also. So does it mean it is reflective of our residual envy, or we can say still envy towards Krishna is manifesting in the form of envious towards the devotees and others around us? Right? Am I right in that?
That is true, Prabhu, that even though we may not be aware, but the original sin was, yes, that envy towards Krishna and devotees. Because even, the whole situation about the fall of the Jivatma is one of those semi-taboo subjects that not discussed very often for a valid reason, that it's an area that is full of speculation. And the Vaishnava Acharyas have not spoken about it. They speak about it from a principal perspective, that the jiva became bahirmukhi, envious. Some of the Acharyas have spoken, they do say that even there, the envy is typically towards the devotees, not so much towards Krishna. Because look at it one way, that of the trillions and billions of souls in the spiritual world, how many get direct association of Krishna? Those are the Nitya Siddhas. They are the ones who can never fall. Right? The positions, the ones who are playing with Krishna in the forest, or dancing with Krishna, or eating food with Krishna, they're the Nitya Siddhas. Right? They're not going to fall. They are the ones who could get envy of Krishna, right? They might be saying that every time we go to play, Krishna always gets to bat. Or why are all the women only running after Krishna? Why not after me? They are the ones who could do that because they are part of that direct association. They don't fall. They are Nitya Siddhas. The other jivas, they are serving somebody who is serving Krishna, right? They are the ones who fall. So who are they interacting with on a day-to-day basis? They're interacting with those who are serving somebody who is serving Krishna. So they're interacting with devotees. So that's what is the, so to speak, is the root cause. Now, envy to devotee, envy to Krishna is synonymous. So that's why the terms are used interchangeably. But practically speaking, even in the spiritual world, it's envy to the devotees that causes the jiva to become bahirmukhi, that why is this person getting, and at this point I'm completely going out on a limb, where one might say, why is this person getting this service, why is this person getting more association, and kind of we see glimpses of that in our own devotional life, right? We get a service, we're doing it, some other devotee comes and takes away that service, we become envious of the devotee. Or we do a service and somebody else gets credit for it, we get envious. Or somebody else is not doing the service properly and we get envious of that, right? How many of us are ever envious towards Radha or Krishna or Gaura-Nitai? No one. Or I don't know, maybe some special cases. But 99.999%, nobody gets envious towards Krishna. You actually get envious towards those that are those you consider to be your peers, right? Like, I would not be envious of Bill Gates or Elon Musk if they buy a big car, but maybe if my neighbor buys a big car, I might get envious because I consider him as my peer, right? Bill Gates is Bill Gates. He can buy all the cars he wants. I just want to know, is this his 10th car or 20th car, just for curiosity purpose. But there's no envy in me towards him. But yeah, if my neighbor buys it, I say, why this guy's got a new car, now he's a bigger car or whatever. So that's the nature, that it's more in terms of the people that you interact with, as opposed to envy is very practical. That way. It's not theoretical. It's very, very practical. It comes from practical experiences.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, when you were talking about this gradual process, I was thinking about the example that you use often about the glass of ink, full of ink, and then gradually when you put milk into it, at one point in time, there will be half milk, half ink, and at one point in time there will be only milk, even though it was full with ink initially. I was thinking about this.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, Prabhu, that's an analogy that Srila Prabhupada and actually Rampat Maharaj likes to give very often to describe that gradual process, which is what we follow. Right now, we may be more ink and less milk, but the process will eventually get us to more milk and less ink, and eventually all milk and no ink. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to verse 11. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravigyan kriyatmana kutastham imam atmanam ye vedapnoti shobhanam. Anyone who knows that this material body, made of 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the Lord is now describing the correct vision. The one who knows the jiva who acts without attachment, udasinam, by controlling the mind along with the sense objects, the subtle organs, and the sense devas, and knows that the Paramatma, such a person attains release from the world. So the word indicates that though the jiva is not completely indifferent to the world in the state of practice, he is aiming for the perfection of jnana. So Srila Prabhupada writes a descriptive purport for this, and it describes the philosophy that we're quite familiar with. Prabhupada says that the first point is that one must know that the soul is different from his body. The soul is called Dehi, and one who possesses the body, which is called Deha. So the material body is Deha, and the soul is called, and the embodied soul is called Dehi. And then he says that because the soul is never changing, the soul is called Kutastham. And the body is constantly being changed because of the reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. The one who understands this, then, so this is essentially Atma Gyan. The process is being summarized over here. So Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna recommends that since happiness and distress come due to the interaction of the modes of material nature, one should not be disturbed by such external movements. Even though one is sometimes absorbed in such external movements, he must learn to tolerate them. The living entity should always be indifferent to the action and reactions of the external body. Later on, he says, only one who constantly engages in devotional service 24 hours a day can be indifferent to the action and reaction of the external body. So this is Prabhupada once again anchoring Gyan to Bhakti. He does that in the Bhagavad Gita, he's doing it over here also. That Atma Gyan, which technically speaking can be attained through Sankhya also, but Prabhupada invariably anchors Gyan to Bhakti. And it's a reflection on the potency of Bhakti and also the current state of affairs. That right now there are, in the age of Kali, the very few people who can develop that kind of detachment to realize the knowledge of duality between body and soul, because that's the process of Gyan. That we first develop detachment, and from detachment, then you reach the state of realizing the difference between the body and the soul. So it's not possible now, so Prabhupada always brings it back to Bhakti. And one who is absorbed in devotional service, as a byproduct of that Bhakti, the person realizes the duality between body and soul. Next verse, 12. Vinasya lingasya, okay, different meter, sorry. Vinasya lingasya guna pravaho dravya kriya karake chetanatmanaha drishtashu sampastu vipastu suryo na vikriyante maya baddha saurada. Lord Vishnu told King Prithu, my dear king, the constant change of this material world is due to the interaction of the three modes of material nature. The five elements, the senses, the demigods who control the senses, as well as the mind, which is agitated by the spirit soul, all these taken together comprise the body. Since the spirit soul is completely different from the combination of the gross and subtle material elements, my devotee, who is connected with me in intense friendship and affection, being completely in knowledge, is never agitated by material happiness and distress. So here, essentially, the Lord is making the same point that Srila Prabhupada is making in the purport of the previous verse, that this knowledge of realizing the duality is bestowed on the devotee by the Lord himself. So the verse indicates that only by developing friendship with the Lord, Maya Baddha Saurda, one becomes na vikriyante. Na vikriyante means one becomes never disturbed. So previous verse, Bhakti Mishra Gyan was discussed. This verse is talking about Shuddha Bhakti. And because Mai Baddha Saurada, the phrase Mai Baddha Saurada indicates that, so Mai Baddha Saurada means bound to me in friendship. Right? So now you're talking about a direct relationship with the Lord in one of the rasas, which is a reflection of Shuddha Bhakti. So Vishnu Chakravarti explains that by practicing Bhakti Mishra Gyan, one can attain liberation. However, when one performs Shuddha Bhakti, then there is not even a desire for liberation. And this point will be made by Prithu Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Vishnu, where Lord Vishnu will offer him a benediction and he will say that I don't need any benediction. I specifically don't need any benediction for liberations because he's situated in the platform of Shuddha Bhakti. So the example that is given is that when a woman becomes a mother, then because she is naturally attracted to her child, she automatically develops detachment from everything else. Before she was a mother, she may have attachment for maybe her friends, maybe her husband, maybe for material activities like taking care of herself or going to the movies or spending time in the mall. But once the same woman becomes a child, has a child, it's not that she sits and says that let me give up this, let me give up this, let me give up this. But because there is so much of natural attraction between the mother and the child that she automatically loses taste for it. In fact, in the at least in the West, the psychologists they deal with a lot of with what they're known as I think postpartum after, or maybe I'm confusing terms, but husband and wife, the relationship becomes weak when the wife becomes a mother, and then the husbands begin to complain about it, and then they go to psychological counseling, etc. But it's a natural thing. It's not that all of a sudden the wife becomes averse to the husband, but it's just a natural attraction for the child. So same analogy is applied that when a person develops bhakti, Maya Baddha, so when a person develops bhakti, as a natural consequence of that, the person develops detachment from material aspects. Prabhupada says that the question may be raised that if the living entity has to act as the superintendent of the activities of the bodily combination, then how can he be independent of the activities of the body? The answer is given here. These activities are completely different from the activities of the spirit soul of the living entities. A crude example can be given in this connection. A businessman riding in a motor car sits in the car, supervises its running, and advises the driver. He knows how much gasoline is used up. He knows everything about the car, but still he's apart from the car and is more connected with his business. Even while riding in the car, he thinks of his business and his office. He has no connection with the car, although he's sitting there. As the businessman is always absorbed in the thoughts of the business, so the living entity can be absorbed in the thoughts of rendering loving service to the Lord. Then it will be possible to remain separate from the activities of the material body. This position of neutrality can be possible only for a devotee. Vishwanath Chakravarti also comments on this verse. He says that how can the jiva be free from birth and death? By just being indifferent to the body and senses while supervising them. And then he explains that samsara arises from the subtle body, which is different from the jiva. The cause of the difference is stated. The subtle body consists of the sense objects, sense organs, sense devas, and intelligence. The meaning is as follows. By identifying with the subtle body, this jiva undergoes samsara. So samsara is repeated birth and death. So he's saying that by identifying with the subtle body, the jiva undergoes samsara. If he is detached from the subtle body, he does not undergo samsara. Though he supervises the subtle body, this is not harmful for the jiva. So the essential point that is being made is that there is a difference between external and internal detachment. And the mood of a devotee is that they may be externally attached, but they are internally detached. So even though Prabhupada gives the example of the businessman sitting in the car, supervising the driver, knowing everything of the car and moving with the car, but internally the person is only thinking of his business. So similarly, a devotee is supervising the body, completely connected with the body, within the body, but because he is always meditating on the Lord, he is not affected by it. And Vishwanath Chakravarti takes that to the next level, saying that when such a soul is not affected by the subtle body, then a cycle of birth and death automatically ceases. So he says, though he possesses the subtle body and interacts with it, he does not identify with it. It has been said that one becomes free of samsara by striving for it, by performing Bhakti Mishra Gyan. So this is the Swadharmena in verse 9. But by pure bhakti, even without striving for freedom from samsara, one attains the result. Right? Same point. That it's a side effect of devotion. Okay, verse 13. Sama samanutma madhya madhamaha sukhe cha dukhe cha jitendriyashrayah mayopaklapa paklapta khila loka samyuto vidhatsva vira khila loka rakshanam. My dear heroic king, please keep yourself always equipoised and treat people equally, whether they are greater than you, in the intermediate stage, or lower than you. Do not be disturbed by temporary distress or happiness. Fully control your mind and senses. In this transcendental position, try to execute your duty as the king in whatever condition of life you may be posted by my arrangement. For your only duty here is to give protection to the citizens of your kingdom. So, in 4 verses, 13, 14, 15, 16, the Lord is now going to give specific instructions to Prithu Maharaj. And the instructions essentially follow the philosophy that he has spoken. So earlier on, the Lord was speaking from a philosophical perspective about the nature of the embodied soul, the nature of Bhakti Mishra Gyan, Shuddha Bhakti, the symptoms of it, the consequence of it. So now he brings it to practice. And that's the special position of a guru. Because philosophy one can get. If the person is intelligent enough, the person can get the philosophy by reading or by hearing from others. But what the guru does is that the guru applies the philosophy to the life of the disciple and gives instructions specific to the situation of the disciple. So the Lord understands Maharaj Prithu as being the king. So he's giving him instructions specific to his position as a king. And the instructions are very, if you relate them to second chapter from verse 54 onwards, Sthita Pragya, like being equal to adversities, equipoise. So Sit is essentially the symptom of a person who is situated in transcendence. So he says you should treat everyone equally, whether the person is at intermediate stage, advanced, or at the same stage. So this is this is essentially the position of an Uttamadhikari. And Uttamadhikari sees everybody with the same eye. Madhyamadhikari makes a difference. Prithu Maharaj might say that, how is that possible? I am a king. I have to make discriminations. If a citizen commits a crime, I have to punish him. If somebody does the correct thing, I have to reward him. So the Lord says, implicit question answer. So the Lord says that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that do not discriminate based on the bodily platform. As a king, you're supposed to discriminate based on the activities of the citizen. That's your job description. So that you should do, but not based on the bodily platform. So the Lord describes how should Maharaj Prithu conduct himself in relationship to others. And the other 2 points are how should he second point is how should he conduct himself in relationship to his situation. So he says that you should be equal in happiness and distress. And the third point is how it refers to himself, that Lord says you should control all of your senses. So if you look at it, it's basically a circle that begins from the self to the situation around the self to the people around the self. How do you deal with yourself? Control yourself. How do you deal with the situation around yourself? Act equally in happiness and distress. How do you deal with the people around you? You treat everyone equally. So Prabhupada says that as a king, Prithu Maharaj was ordered by Lord Vishnu to keep himself always aloof from the activities of the bodily situation and always engage in the service of the Lord, and thus keep himself in the liberator stage. The word Baddha Saurda in the previous verse is explained here. One can fully remain in intimate connection with the Supreme Lord directly, or receive orders from his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, and execute the orders sincerely when one keeps aloof from the activities of the Lord. So previously the Lord had talked about Baddha Surda, that such a person is connected to me in friendship. Srila Prabhupada says that that is elaborated in this verse, that how can one remain connected to the Lord in friendship? So one remains, Prabhupada said, one remains in intimate connection with the Lord directly or with his bona fide representatives and execute the orders sincerely when one keeps aloof from the activities of the body. Right? Two things. That one becomes materially detached and one becomes attached to the instructions of the Lord. So Prabhupada said, if one sticks to the principle of abiding by the order of the spiritual master, he will always remain in a liberated position. It's a very powerful statement, Prabhupada made, which means that simply by following the orders of the Lord and the Guru, one becomes aloof from the body. So one develops detachment by surrender, and the process of surrender results in more detachment. Okay, let's move on to the next verse, 14. Shreha praja palanam eva rajno yat samprayate sukrita shashtam amsham hartan yatha harta punya prajana arakshita karharo agammati. To give protection to the general mass of people who are citizens of the state is the prescribed occupational duty for a king. By acting in that way, the king in this life, the king in his next life shares 1/6 of the results of the pious activities of the citizens. But a king or an executive head of state who simply collects taxes from the citizens but does not give proper protection as human beings has the results of his own pious activities taken away by the citizens. And in exchange for not giving protection, he becomes liable for punishment for the impious activities of his subject. So this verse talks about the importance of performing one's duty as a way to make spiritual progress. Because remember, all this is Devi Varnash. Right? So the Lord is talking about why is it important to perform your duty as a way to make spiritual progress. So earlier on in the previous verse, the Lord had basically said that be aloof, be equal, and be undisturbed. Now he is giving more practical instructions. That while in that stage, make sure that you always be cognizant of your duty as a king, that not only you are engaged in developing these qualities, you are also helping your citizens develop those qualities. So, so the Lord is instructing Prithu Maharaj to give the instructions that he has received from him to his citizens. That just like I am asking you to make spiritual progress, while performing your duty, you should make arrangements for your citizens to do the same. If you do not, then you should not think that simply by taking care of yourself, you will be able to make advancements, because you will be contaminated by the sinful activities that are performed by the people in your kingdom. But on the other hand, if you assist them, then their pious activities will help you. So the word Shreya is used, which means auspiciousness. And what is the protection that this Shreya gives? Prabhupada describes that in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that this is the protection from the bondage of lust, which is acting whimsically or without reference to the scriptural injunction. So the point that is made for Maharaj Prithu is also true for the Guru, that the Gurus also get the pious and sinful reactions of the disciples depending on the way they conduct them. That if the Guru takes on disciples but is only concerned about his own spiritual welfare, then the sinful activities of the disciples will affect him. But on the other hand, when the Guru makes advancements himself and is also helping the disciple make advancements, then he also gets the benefit of the advancement that is made by the disciples, which is why taking on the position of a Guru is a matter of great responsibility. It's not just a matter of pride that I have so many people who are under my umbrella, or who give obeisances to me or consider me as, or have pictures of me on their altar. But there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes along with it. Okay, I'll do one more verse and pause for discussion. Evam vijagrayatu granayanu vrata dharma pradano netamo vitashaya rashmin kalena grupoyata drashtasi siddhananuraktaloka. Lord Vishnu continued, my dear Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahman authorities, as they have received by the disciplic succession, by hearing from the master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them, without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you. And very soon, you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the four Kumaras, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, Sanat Kumar. So Prithu Maharaj is instructing Lord Vishnu is instructing Prithu Maharaj to ensure that all the citizens are also executing their Varnashram Dharma. And Prithu Maharaj might say that, how can I ensure? There are so many people and they have so many different propensities. And it's difficult for me, of course, Prithu Maharaj, nothing is difficult, he's Shakti Deshavtar, but he might say, but it is difficult for me to just control my senses or be equal in happiness and distress. And now you're saying that I'm supposed to be responsible for the millions of people who are in my praja. And the Lord said, there's no problem in that. All you have to do is to follow the instructions of the learned Brahmanas as they have received in the Parampara. That's all you have to do, and do not submit to mental concoction. So, which means that take the instructions transparently and apply. That's all you have to do. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the Lord is saying that you will be the chief person engaged in dharma handed down and approved by the Brahmanas who are knowledgeable of scriptures. You will be unattached to all these things. So, by example, he will reach that state, and by following the instructions of the Brahmanas, he will help the others reach that stage. Prabhupada says that in this age, however, the Varnashram Dharma is topsy-turvy. It is very difficult to strictly follow all the disciplines. So the only method is Krishna consciousness. As Varnashram Dharma is executed from different positions by different men, so Krishna consciousness principles can be followed by everyone in every part of the world. Later on he says, in other words, the executive heads are fools and rascals in the strict sense of the terms, and the people in general are Shudras. So he's explaining why things are topsy-turvy. This combination of fools and rascals and Shudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity in the world. So it's not that Prabhupada is negating the instructions given by Lord Vishnu to Prithu Maharaj, but he is establishing the context that at a time when the kings were properly situated, the Brahmanas were properly situated, the people were submissive to the orders of the king, this process would have worked, not in the current day and age. He says that for Vaishnavas in the current age, the recommendation is to follow Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. Okay, so I'll stop here for the day and see if we have discussion.
Is there any explanation why Lord Vishnu specifically mentioned about 4 Kumaras as liberated personalities? You will see them. You'll be able to see such already liberated personalities as 4 Kumaras. Is there any specific?
So the Lord is giving it as a benediction to Prithu Maharaj, because we'll see in the next chapter that after Lord Vishnu goes, the 4 Kumaras will come. And they will also have this wonderful conversation and instructions. They'll give instructions to Prithu Maharaj. So there, Prabhupada will say that because for the Lord to say something, it's the same thing as the Lord giving a benediction. Because the Lord gave this benediction to Prithu Maharaj, he was able to get the association of 4 Kumaras. Now one might say that Prithu Maharaj has the association of the Lord. What else does he need? But the same principle applies, that the association of the Lord is sweet and special, but then sweeter and more special than that is the association of his devotees. And Prithu Maharaj will glorify that also, that because the 4 Kumaras are personally present, his heart has now become even more sanctified by the exalted devotees of the Lord. Okay, so if you have no more questions, we can stop here for the day. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya eva cha papitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.